The fluorescent lights hummed above Gloria's head, casting sterile shadows across the waiting room where she'd been sitting for 3 hours. Her daughter Melissa's hand had gone cold in hers, not the peaceful cold of sleep, but something else, something that made Gloria's throat tighten with a fear she couldn't name. The receptionist glanced up, saw them still there, and returned to her computer screen with practiced indifference. "You're overreacting," the nurse had said 40 minutes ago, her voice carrying that particular tone Gloria had heard too many times before, the one that made her feel small and unreasonable for daring to insist something was desperately wrong. But Melissa's lips were turning blue now, a shade that didn't exist in any world where everything was fine. The clock on the wall ticked forward. No one came, and in the terrible clarity of that moment, Gloria understood that the color of her skin had just become a matter of life and death. But she didn't yet know that what happened in the next 7 minutes would expose a systemic failure so horrifying it would force an entire hospital to confront the unconscionable truth they'd been hiding for years. If you've ever felt invisible when you needed to be seen most, if you've ever been dismissed when every instinct screamed that something was wrong, stay with this story. Because what Gloria discovered in that hospital corridor will shatter everything you thought you knew about who gets believed in moments of crisis. Subscribe so you don't miss how one mother's refusal to stay silent became the catalyst that saved countless lives. The fluorescent lights hummed above Gloria's head, casting sterile shadows across the waiting room where she'd been sitting for 3 hours. Her daughter Melissa's hand had gone cold in hers, not the peaceful cold of sleep, but something else, something that made Gloria's throat tighten with a fear she couldn't name. The receptionist glanced up, saw them still there, and returned to her computer screen with practiced indifference. "You're overreacting," the nurse had said 40 minutes ago, her voice carrying that particular tone Gloria had heard too many times before, the one that made her feel small and unreasonable for daring to insist something was desperately wrong. But Melissa's lips were turning blue now, a shade that didn't exist in any world where everything was fine. It had started that morning with what Gloria thought was the flu. Melissa complained of stomach pain, then nausea, then a fever that climbed faster than any fever should. By noon, her daughter's skin felt like fire beneath Gloria's palm. By 2 o'clock, Melissa was confused, calling Gloria by her grandmother's name, asking where the birds were coming from. There were no birds. Gloria had driven to County General with her hazard lights on. Melissa slumped in the passenger seat, whimpering. The intake nurse, a white woman in her 50s named Patricia, according to her badge, had barely looked at Melissa before typing something into her computer. "Flu season," Patricia said, as if those 2 words explained everything, excused everything. "We're very busy today. Have a seat. Someone will call you." That was 3 hours ago. Gloria watched the clock on the wall, its second hand moving with mechanical indifference, while her daughter's breathing grew more labored with each passing minute. Melissa's eyes had stopped focusing properly. When Gloria tried to get her to drink water, Melissa couldn't seem to remember how to swallow. "Excuse me," Gloria said, approaching the desk for the 5th time. "Please, she's getting worse. She needs to see someone now." Patricia didn't look up from her computer. "Ma'am, I've told you. We're triaging by severity. Your daughter has flu symptoms. There are more critical cases ahead of you." Her lips are blue. Gloria's voice cracked on the word blue, a color that shouldn't exist on her baby's face. Probably just the lighting in here. Patricia's tone suggested Gloria was the problem, not the system. "Please return to your seat." Gloria turned back to Melissa and felt something break inside her chest. Her daughter's head lolled to the side, her breathing reduced to shallow gasps. This wasn't the flu. Every instinct Gloria possessed screamed that this was something catastrophic, something that required immediate intervention, but she was trapped in a waiting room where her panic was treated as performance, where her terror was dismissed as overreaction. A white family entered through the emergency room doors, a couple with a teenage son who was cradling his arm. Possible fracture, Gloria guessed from the way he held it. The father approached the desk with the confidence of someone who expected to be heard. "My son broke his arm playing basketball," the father said. "We need to get him an X-ray." Patricia's entire demeanor transformed. Her shoulders softened. Her voice took on a tone of genuine concern. "Oh no, let's get him back right away. How much pain are you in, sweetheart?" Gloria watched in disbelief as Patricia stood up, came around the desk, and personally escorted the family through the double doors that led to the treatment area. They'd been in the waiting room for less than 2 minutes. Melissa had been deteriorating for 3 hours. Something cold and terrible crystallized in Gloria's chest. Not just fear now, but understanding. The kind of understanding that arrived like a death sentence, confirming every suspicion she'd spent her life trying not to believe. She looked around the waiting room and saw what she'd been too panicked to notice before. Everyone still waiting looked like her. Brown faces, black faces, tired eyes that held the same exhausted resignation. Everyone who'd been taken back immediately had been white. Gloria stood up, her legs unsteady beneath her. She walked to the desk and positioned herself where she could see Patricia's computer screen, where she could see the triage board mounted on the wall behind the reception area. The board that tracked every patient's status. The board she wasn't supposed to see. And there it was. The color-coded system. Red for critical, yellow for urgent, green for non-urgent. Each patient had a colored indicator next to their name. Melissa Martinez. Green, green, while her lips turned blue. Green, while her breathing failed. Green, while her organs began to shut down. Gloria's vision narrowed to that single word, that single color, that single act of casual murder disguised as bureaucracy. Her hands gripped the edge of the desk hard enough that her knuckles went white. "Why is my daughter marked green?" Her voice came out low, dangerous, a mother's rage compressed into 7 words. Patricia returned from the treatment area, her expression shifting to annoyance when she saw Gloria at the desk. "Ma'am, I need you to step back. Why is my daughter marked green?" Gloria's shout shattered the waiting room's oppressive quiet. Every head turned. Every eye watched. "She can't breathe. She's turning blue. She doesn't know where she is. And you marked her non-urgent? You need to calm down. Don't you dare tell me to calm down. My daughter is dying, and you put her at the bottom of your list because—" Gloria stopped, the words catching in her throat, because saying them out loud made them real, made them undeniable. Patricia's face hardened. "Because what? You need to be very careful about what you're accusing this hospital of." The threat was clear. The power dynamic was clear. Gloria was a black woman raising her voice in a white space, and security would be called, and she would be removed. And Melissa would sit here turning blue until it was too late. But then Melissa made a sound. Not a cry or a word, but a wet, rattling gasp that didn't sound human. Gloria spun around. Her daughter's eyes had rolled back in her head. Her body convulsed once, twice, then went terribly, impossibly still. Gloria's scream finally penetrated their indifference. A young Asian doctor emerged from the treatment area, drawn by the commotion, and his eyes landed on Melissa. His face transformed from curiosity to horror in the space of a heartbeat. "Get a gurney, now!" He was running toward them, his badge identifying him as Dr. Andrew Chen. "How long has she been like this?" 3 hours, Gloria sobbed. "I've been telling them for 3 hours." Dr. Chen's head snapped toward Patricia with an expression of pure fury, but there was no time for accusations. Nurses appeared with a gurney. Melissa's limp body was lifted, transferred, rushed through those double doors that had remained closed for so long. Gloria ran after them, her heart hammering against her ribs, her mind screaming prayers she'd forgotten she knew. The trauma room erupted into controlled chaos. Voices calling out numbers, machines beeping, hands working with practiced efficiency. Dr. Chen positioned himself at Melissa's head, checking her airway, calling for intubation equipment. Pulse is thready. Blood pressure's crashing. Temperature's 104.2. She's in septic shock. Septic shock. The words landed like bullets in Gloria's chest. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of the way while her daughter's life hung in the balance, held together by machines and the desperate competence of strangers. Dr. Chen worked with focused intensity, his hands steady even as his voice carried an edge of barely controlled anger. "When did symptoms start?" he asked Gloria without looking away from Melissa. "This morning. Stomach pain first, then fever, then confusion. And intake was 3 hours ago?" "Yes," his jaw clenched. "These symptoms should have triggered immediate intervention." "This is classic presentation of sepsis progressing to shock." He turned to a nurse. "Get me her intake forms. I want to see exactly what was documented." The nurse hesitated, glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to stop her. Dr. Chen's voice cut through her uncertainty like a blade. "Now!" Gloria watched as the nurse returned with a clipboard, watched as Dr. Chen's eyes scanned the intake form while his hands continued their life-saving work. Watched as his expression shifted from anger to something darker, something that looked like recognition. He pulled out his phone with one hand while adjusting Melissa's IV with the other, stepping away just far enough that his voice wouldn't carry to the other medical staff. But Gloria was close enough to hear, pressed against the wall in her corner of borrowed space. "This is Dr. Chen in ER. I need you to pull patient records for the last 6 months. I'm looking for a specific pattern." He paused, listening. "Black and Latino pediatric cases that were delayed at intake. Cross-reference with sepsis, meningitis, and other time-critical conditions. Yes, I know what I'm asking for. Just pull them." The machines surrounding Melissa finally stabilized into a rhythm that suggested life instead of death. Her color began to return. Not healthy, but no longer the terrifying gray that had stolen Gloria's breath. Dr. Chen stepped back from the bed, peeling off his gloves with hands that trembled just slightly, the only visible sign of the adrenaline that had fueled the last 30 minutes of crisis intervention. "She's stable," he said to Gloria, his voice carefully controlled. "We got to her in time, but barely. Another 20 minutes and we'd be having a very different conversation." Gloria's knees buckled. A nurse caught her, guided her to a chair, but Gloria couldn't take her eyes off Melissa's small form beneath the hospital blankets. The breathing tube, the monitors, the evidence of how close they'd come to catastrophe. "She's going to the ICU for observation," Dr. Chen continued. "Septic shock requires intensive monitoring for the next 48 hours minimum. She'll need strong antibiotics, fluid management, and—" He stopped, his professional composure cracking. "Ms. Martinez, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did the intake nurse ask you specific questions about Melissa's symptoms? About the progression? About timing?" Gloria's throat tightened. "I tried to tell her everything. She barely listened. She kept typing while I was talking, and then she just said it was flu season and told me to sit down." Dr. Chen's expression turned to stone. "Did she take Melissa's vitals? Temperature, blood pressure, oxygen levels?" "She took her temperature. That's all. Not blood pressure? Not oxygen saturation? No." He turned away, running a hand through his hair, and Gloria saw something that terrified her more than Melissa's blue lips, more than the 3-hour wait, more than the word sepsis. She saw confirmation. This doctor, this young man who'd just saved her daughter's life, was not surprised. He was not shocked by the negligence. He was recognizing a pattern. The phone in his pocket buzzed. He pulled it out, read something on the screen, and his face went pale. "Excuse me for one moment." He stepped out into the hallway, but his voice carried back through the partially open door. "How many? 12 documented cases? Jesus Christ! And how many had outcomes? What? 3 fatalities? Gloria's blood turned to ice. 3 fatalities. 3 families who'd sat in that waiting room, dismissed and delayed, who didn't have a doctor, happened to glance their way at the critical moment. 3 children who didn't get the last-minute intervention that saved Melissa. Dr. Chen returned, and the expression on his face told Gloria that everything was about to change. For better or worse. She couldn't tell yet, but the ground beneath her feet was shifting. "Ms. Martinez, I'm going to tell you something that could cost me my career," he said quietly, closing the door behind him. "There's a pattern of discriminatory triage practices in this emergency room. What happened to Melissa isn't isolated. It's systematic." The word systematic felt like a punch to Gloria's gut. Not an accident, not a mistake, not one racist nurse having a bad day. Systematic meant infrastructure, meant policy, meant dozens or hundreds of families facing the same dismissal, the same deadly delays. The records I just reviewed show 12 cases in the last 6 months alone, where Black and Latino children with critical symptoms were marked low priority at intake. 3 of those children died. 3 families buried their children because someone behind that desk decided their pain didn't matter, their panic was overreaction, their emergency wasn't urgent. Gloria couldn't speak. Her mind was fragmenting, trying to hold the impossible weight of this information. Melissa was alive, but 3 other children were dead. Melissa would recover, but 3 other mothers were standing at gravesites. The relief and the horror crashed together in her chest until she couldn't distinguish between gratitude and rage. "What were their names?" Gloria whispered. Dr. Chen hesitated. "Ms. Martinez, what were their names?" Her voice was steel now, forged in the waiting room, hardened by the 3 hours of being invisible. He looked at her for a long moment, seeming to measure something in her expression. Then he pulled out his phone, read from the screen. "Miguel Santos, age 6, died of bacterial meningitis. Waited 4 hours before being seen. By then, the infection had progressed too far. Keisha Williams, age 9, diabetic ketoacidosis. Marked non-urgent despite clear signs of crisis. Died en route to ICU. And Jamal Thompson, age 7. Perforated appendix that became septic. Waited 2.5 hours while intake insisted it was just a stomachache." Each name was a dagger. Each age was a wound. Gloria thought of their mothers, sitting where she'd been sitting, begging where she'd been begging, dismissed as she'd been dismissed. But their children didn't survive. Their panic had been validated too late. "Why are you telling me this?" Gloria asked, though she already knew the answer, could feel it forming in the terrible clarity of this moment. "Because you're going to be offered money to stay quiet," Dr. Chen said. "The hospital administration will come to you with a settlement agreement and a non-disclosure clause. They'll offer you enough money to cover Melissa's medical bills, maybe more. They'll tell you it's in your daughter's best interest to accept it and move forward with your life." And the 3 families who lost their children? Were they offered money too? Dr. Chen's silence was answer enough. Gloria looked at Melissa, breathing steadily now with the help of machines. Her small hand relaxed against the white sheets, alive because of luck, because a doctor happened to glance their way, because 20 more minutes hadn't passed. Not because the system worked, not because someone in power cared, but because of chance. "I need to see her," Gloria said. "I need to stay with her. Of course. I'll have them set up a chair in her ICU room." Dr. Chen moved toward the door, then stopped. "Ms. Martinez, whatever you decide to do with the information I've given you, I want you to know. Melissa is going to be okay. She's strong. She fought hard. You both did." Gloria nodded, but her mind was already moving forward, already calculating, already planning. Melissa would recover. They would walk out of this hospital together. But 3 other families would never have that reunion. And how many more children would be dismissed, delayed, denied, until it was too late? The door opened, and a man in an expensive suit entered, his smile practiced and empty. Ms. Martinez? I'm Richard Walsh, the hospital administrator. I wanted to personally check on you and your daughter, and to discuss how we can support you during this difficult time. Dr. Chen's warning echoed in Gloria's mind. The offer was coming, just as he'd predicted. The money, the silence, the choice between Melissa's future and justice for the families who'd lost everything. Richard Walsh pulled out a folder, his movements smooth with the practice of someone who'd done this before. I understand you experienced some delays in our waiting room. We take these matters very seriously, and I'd like to offer you compensation for your distress. This settlement agreement includes full coverage of all medical expenses, plus an additional amount for pain and suffering. All we ask is that you sign this confidentiality clause, which is standard procedure in these situations. He set the folder on the table beside Melissa's bed, and Gloria saw the number on the check paper clipped to the agreement. It was more money than she'd see in 3 years of working at the grocery store. It was Melissa's college fund. It was security and safety and the ability to never worry about bills again. It was also the price of 3 children's lives, packaged as paperwork and delivered with a smile. Gloria's hands shook as she reached for the folder. She saw Walsh's shoulders relax, saw the victory in his eyes. He thought she was just another desperate mother who could be bought, silenced, erased. But Gloria was thinking of Miguel Santos, age 6, Keisha Williams, age 9, Jamal Thompson, age 7. She was thinking of their mothers, who'd accepted these same folders, signed these same papers, buried their grief beneath non-disclosure agreements. She picked up the folder, looked at the number, felt the weight of what that money could mean for Melissa's future. Then she dropped it in the trash can beside the bed. "Get out," Gloria said, her voice quiet but absolute. "And tell whoever's responsible for that triage system that I'm going to make sure the whole world knows what happened here. Every news station, every lawyer, every family who's ever sat in that waiting room wondering why their child's pain didn't matter. You want to pay me? Pay the families whose children died because of your system. Pay them, and then burn that system to the ground." Richard Walsh's face transformed from confidence to fury in the space of a heartbeat. "You're making a serious mistake, Ms. Martinez. That money would have secured your daughter's future. Without it, you'll be drowning in medical debt. The legal battle you're suggesting would take years and cost everything you have. Is your pride really worth destroying your family's financial security?" Gloria stood up, positioning herself between Walsh and Melissa's bed. "My pride? My daughter almost died because your staff decided her life wasn't worth interrupting their paperwork. 3 other children did die. So no, this isn't about pride. This is about making sure no other mother has to watch her child turn blue, while someone behind a desk marks them non-urgent. You have no proof of systematic discrimination. Dr. Chen has 12 documented cases showing a pattern. I'm guessing, if we look deeper, we'll find a lot more than 12. And I'm guessing you know exactly what we'll find, which is why you're here with a check and a gag order instead of an apology and a plan for change." Walsh's expression turned cold. "Threatening this hospital will not end well for you. We have resources you can't begin to imagine. Legal teams, PR firms, the ability to make your life very difficult. Think about what you're risking before you make this decision final." It was a threat wrapped in professional language, delivered with a smile. But Gloria had spent 3 hours being dismissed, diminished, treated as if her terror was unreasonable and her daughter's life was low priority. She'd used up all her capacity for fear. "I've already made my decision," Gloria said. "Now get out of my daughter's room." Walsh picked up the folder from the trash, his movements sharp with barely contained rage. At the door, he turned back. "This hospital serves thousands of patients every year. We save lives every single day. Don't let one unfortunate incident destroy the reputation of an institution that does tremendous good for this community." "One unfortunate incident?" Gloria's voice cracked. 3 children are dead. That's not an incident. That's a body count. And every day you protect the system that killed them is another day you're responsible for who dies next. The door closed behind Walsh with a soft click that sounded like a declaration of war. Dr. Chen, who'd been standing quietly in the corner, let out a breath. You just made a very powerful enemy. Good, Gloria said, sinking into the chair beside Melissa's bed and taking her daughter's hand. Because I just became one too. The ICU settled into its nocturnal rhythm, machines beeping in synchronized patterns, nurses moving through pools of dim light, the whispered conversations of families keeping vigil beside beds. Gloria hadn't slept. She sat in the chair beside Melissa, watching the rise and fall of her daughter's chest, each breath a reassurance that they'd survived what should have killed them. Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway at 2 a.m, holding a manila folder thick enough to be a weapon. His eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion, but there was something electric in his expression. The look of someone who'd found evidence of a crime and couldn't unsee it. You should be sleeping, Gloria said, though she knew why he was here, knew that some truths were too urgent to wait for daylight. I've been pulling records all night, he said, closing the door behind him. Not just the 12 cases I mentioned earlier. I went back 2 years. Gloria, he stopped, seemed to struggle with how to deliver what he'd discovered. It's worse than I thought. Much worse. He opened the folder on the small table beside Melissa's bed, spreading out printed records, each one marked with colored tabs. 47 cases. 47 Black and Latino children who presented with critical symptoms and were marked low priority at intake. Average wait time for these patients was 2 hours and 43 minutes. Average wait time for white patients with similar symptoms? 18 minutes. The numbers hit Gloria like physical blows. 47 children. 47 families. 2 years of systematic dismissal, documented in clinical notes and timestamps. The 3 fatalities I mentioned, Miguel, Keisha, and Jamal, they're just the ones who died in the hospital. But there are 6 more cases where children were eventually sent home after delayed treatment, and later died or suffered permanent complications. Parents brought them back, deteriorating, and by then the damage was irreversible. Dr. Chen's voice cracked on the word irreversible. 9 children. 9 families destroyed by a triage system that assessed the urgency of their crisis based on the color of their skin. Gloria's hands trembled as she looked at the records. Each page was a child's name, age, symptoms, wait time, outcome. The clinical language couldn't hide the horror. Patient expired. Irreversible brain damage. Delayed intervention resulting in mortality. Bureaucratic phrases that meant a mother's world had ended while she sat in a waiting room being told she was overreacting. There's more, Dr. Chen continued, pulling out another set of documents. I found emails, internal communications between administration and the triage supervisor. They knew. Gloria. They knew there was a disparity in wait times. They had data showing that minority patients were being systematically under-triaged, and they buried it. He showed her an email chain from 8 months ago. A quality assurance analyst had flagged the racial disparities in emergency wait times. The data was clear, undeniable. Black and Latino patients waited an average of 147% longer than white patients for similar chief complaints. The analyst recommended immediate investigation and retraining. The response from Richard Walsh, the hospital administrator Gloria had thrown out of Melissa's room, was brief. This data is incomplete and doesn't account for confounding variables. We'll discuss internally, but I don't see sufficient evidence to warrant system-wide changes. Please do not distribute this report outside of leadership review. The report had been filed away. Nothing changed, and children continued to die. Confounding variables, Gloria repeated, the words bitter in her mouth. That's what he called it. what he called my daughter's life. Dr. Chen sat down heavily in the chair across from her. I've been a doctor for 4 years. I went into medicine because I wanted to save lives, because I believed healthcare was about compassion and science and treating every patient with dignity. But this, he gestured to the folders, the evidence of institutional murder disguised as policy. This is what happens when systemic racism gets a medical degree and a triage protocol. People die, and the system protects itself. Gloria looked at her daughter, stable now but still so fragile, and felt something crystallize inside her chest. Not just rage anymore, but purpose. The kind of purpose that could move mountains or burn institutions to the ground. I need copies of everything, she said. Every record, every email, every piece of evidence that shows what they did and what they knew. Dr. Chen hesitated. If I give you these, I'll lose my job. Probably my medical license. They'll accuse me of violating HIPAA, of stealing confidential documents. They'll destroy my career. I know what I'm asking, Gloria said softly, and I can't promise you'll be protected. But those 9 families, the ones who lost everything, they deserve to know the truth. They deserve to know their children's deaths weren't unavoidable tragedies. They were policy decisions. For a long moment, Dr. Chen stared at the folders spread between them. Gloria could see the war happening behind his eyes. The oath he'd taken to do no harm weighed against the institutional power that would crush him for speaking truth. The life he'd built weighed against the lives that had been stolen. Then he pulled out his phone and started taking photographs of every document, every email, every damning piece of evidence. My parents immigrated from Taiwan with nothing, he said while he worked, his voice steady despite the way his hands shook. They sacrificed everything so I could become a doctor, so I could help people. If I stay silent now, if I protect my career while knowing what I know. He stopped, met Gloria's eyes. Then I'm just another part of the system that kills children. He transferred the photos to a secure cloud drive, then sent Gloria the access credentials. Everything's there. 47 patient records with identifying information redacted where necessary to protect privacy, but with enough detail to show the pattern. The emails showing administration was warned. The quality assurance report they buried. The comparison data showing wait time disparities. All of it. What will you do now? Gloria asked. I'm going to file a formal complaint with the State Medical Board and the Department of Health. I'm going to request an external investigation into discriminatory practices. And when administration tries to silence me, I'm going to make sure every medical journal and news outlet knows exactly why I was fired. He managed a thin smile. I'm going to make myself too loud to disappear. A soft knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal a black woman in her mid-40s, wearing scrubs and an expression of carefully controlled fury. Her badge identified her as Janet Wilson, RN. I heard you were collecting evidence, she said quietly, slipping into the room and closing the door. I want to add my testimony. I've worked in this ER for 12 years. I've watched the triage system dismiss black and brown children over and over. I've tried to advocate, tried to escalate, tried to get someone in power to listen. But nurses don't have the authority doctors do. Our complaints get filed under staff concerns and ignored. She pulled out her own phone, showing Gloria a document she'd been keeping. I started tracking cases 6 months ago, after a little girl named Keisha Williams died. I knew her family. I went to church with her grandmother. I watched her wait 3 hours for someone to take her seriously. And I couldn't do anything because the triage nurse had already marked her non-urgent. So I started documenting every case where I saw the same pattern. I have dates, times, names, outcomes, and I have the names of 5 other nurses who've witnessed the same thing and are willing to testify. Gloria felt something shift in the room. The weight of isolation lifting, replaced by the power of collective truth. She wasn't alone. Dr. Chen wasn't alone. There were others who'd seen the system's cruelty and been waiting for someone to stand up first, someone to make it safe to speak. How many more are there? Gloria asked. How many other staff members who've seen this and wanted to fight it? At least a dozen that I know of, Janet said. But they're scared. They have families, mortgages, careers that depend on staying employed. The hospital has made it clear that whistleblowers will be terminated and blacklisted. But if you're building a case, if you're really going to take this to court and to the media, they'll come forward. Not everyone, but enough. Dr. Chen was typing rapidly on his phone. I'm creating a secure group for hospital staff who want to contribute evidence or testimony. Encrypted. Anonymous unless someone chooses to reveal their identity. If administration tries to retaliate against one person, they'll find themselves facing dozens. Gloria looked at these two people. A young doctor risking everything he'd worked for, a nurse who'd carried the weight of preventable deaths for months, and felt the impossible mathematics of justice beginning to balance. Melissa was one child saved, but 9 were dead. 47 had suffered. And how many more would face the same system if nothing changed? I'm going to need a lawyer, Gloria said. Someone who specializes in civil rights cases. Someone who won't be intimidated by the hospital's legal team. Janet smiled for the first time since entering the room. I know someone. Her name is Diana Ross. Yes, like the singer. And she spent 20 years taking on hospitals for discriminatory practices. She's won cases against institutions twice this size. If anyone can hold them accountable, it's her. The machines around Melissa beeped steadily, marking time in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. Gloria knew what came next would be brutal. Legal battles that could stretch for years. Media scrutiny that would expose every detail of the worst day of her life. Financial pressure designed to break her will. Threats both subtle and overt. The hospital had resources, power, connections. They would use all of it to protect their reputation and bury the truth. But Gloria had something they couldn't buy or threaten away. She had 9 mothers who'd lost their children, 47 families who'd been dismissed, a community that had suffered in silence for years. She had doctors and nurses ready to testify. She had evidence that couldn't be explained away. And she had survived. Melissa had survived. They were alive to tell the story that 3 other families would never get to tell. Call the lawyer, Gloria said. And then we're going to call every news station in the state. Because Richard Walsh was right about one thing. This hospital does serve thousands of patients every year, which means thousands of families deserve to know that the emergency room they trust with their children's lives has been using a triage system that makes your skin color a matter of life and death. Diana Ross, corporate civil rights attorney, not the singer, as she joked when she first answered Janet's call, arrived at the hospital at 6 in the morning with the energy of someone who'd been waiting for this case her entire career. She was a tall black woman in her 50s, with silver, streaks in her natural hair and eyes that assessed. Everything with the precision of a surgeon. She spent 3 hours in the ICU, family consultation room reviewing the evidence Dr. Chen and Janet had compiled, her expression growing darker with each document. When she finally looked up at Gloria, her voice was tight with controlled rage. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of systemic discrimination I've seen in 2 decades of practice, Diana said. The email chain alone is enough to prove administration knew about racial disparities and chose to do nothing. Add in the patient records showing consistent patterns of delayed care correlated with race, the testimony from medical staff, and the 3 fatalities. She stopped, gathered herself. We can win this. Not just a settlement, but real systemic change. Federal oversight. Complete restructuring of their triage protocols, and financial compensation for every family affected. How long will it take? Gloria asked. If they fight us? 2 to 3 years. But they won't let this go to trial, Gloria. Once we file the lawsuit and release the evidence to the media, The public pressure will be massive. They'll want to settle quickly to contain the damage. My guess is 6 months, maybe less. And the 3 families who lost their children? The ones who already signed non-disclosure agreements? Diana smiled, and there was something fierce in it. Non-disclosure agreements signed under duress, without full knowledge of systemic wrongdoing, and in exchange for inadequate compensation. Those can be challenged and often nullified. Especially when there's a pattern of the institution using settlements to silence victims and hide evidence of ongoing harm. We'll reach out to those families. Most of them will want justice more than they wanted money. A soft knock interrupted them. A nurse appeared in the doorway, her expression uncertain. "Miss Martinez, there are reporters in the lobby asking about what happened to your daughter. Security is trying to remove them, but they're saying it's a matter of public interest." Gloria looked at Diana, who was already standing, already pulling out her phone. "Someone leaked," Diana said. "Either hospital staff who support us, or—" She paused, reconsidering. "Or someone in administration who wants to control the narrative before we can." "What do I do?" Gloria asked. "You go down there and tell the truth," Diana said. "All of it, on camera. Create a public record of what happened before the hospital's PR team can spin this into an isolated incident caused by one rogue employee. Make this too big to bury." Gloria's heart hammered. She'd never been on camera, never spoken to reporters, never imagined herself as someone whose voice mattered beyond her own family and community. But she thought of Keisha's grandmother at church, grieving in silence because a settlement agreement forbade her from speaking. She thought of Miguel's parents, wherever they were, carrying the weight of their loss alone. She thought of Jamal's family, paid to disappear. "Help me look presentable," Gloria said to Janet, who smiled and pulled out a compact mirror. 5 minutes later, Gloria walked into the hospital lobby with Diana beside her. 7 reporters with cameras and microphones turned as one, their attention laser-focused. Gloria saw her reflection in the glass doors, exhausted, wrung out, but standing. "Still standing." "Ms. Martinez," a reporter called out, "can you tell us what happened to your daughter?" Gloria took a breath, felt Diana's steadying presence beside her, and began to speak. "My 8-year-old daughter, Melissa, came to this emergency room 3 days ago with symptoms of septic shock. I told the intake nurse she was getting worse. I told her Melissa was confused, that she couldn't breathe properly, that something was desperately wrong. The nurse dismissed my concerns and marked my daughter non-urgent. We waited 3 hours while Melissa deteriorated. We waited while white families who arrived after us were taken back immediately. We waited until my daughter's heart nearly stopped. The cameras captured everything, her voice breaking on certain words, her hands trembling with the memory. The raw truth of a mother's terror. A doctor saved my daughter's life at the last possible moment. But I've learned that 9 other Black and Latino children weren't so lucky. 9 children died or suffered permanent damage because this hospital operates a triage system that treats minority children as less urgent, less important, less worthy of immediate care. And the hospital administration knew. They had data showing racial disparities in wait times. They were warned 8 months ago. And they did nothing, one reporter pushed forward. "Do you have evidence of this systemic discrimination?" Diana stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd won these battles before. "We have 47 documented cases over 2 years, showing a clear pattern of delayed care for Black and Latino pediatric patients. We have internal emails proving administration was aware of racial disparities. We have testimony from multiple medical staff members. And we have the names of 9 children who paid with their lives for a discriminatory system. We'll be filing a federal civil rights lawsuit this afternoon, and all evidence will be submitted to the Department of Health for immediate investigation." The lobby erupted with questions, but Gloria heard only one voice cutting through the chaos. Richard Walsh, the hospital administrator, emerging from an elevator with 3 people in suits, flanking him like shields. "This is a gross mischaracterization of a complex situation," Walsh said, his voice smooth despite the fury in his eyes. "County General Hospital serves all patients equally regardless of race. We have some of the shortest wait times in the region. The tragic delays Ms. Martinez experienced were the result of an unusually high patient volume that day, not discriminatory practices." "Then explain the emails," Diana shot back. "Explain why your quality assurance analyst documented racial disparities in wait times and you buried the report. Explain why black children waited an average of 147% longer than white children with identical symptoms." Walsh's expression hardened. "Those statistics are taken out of context and don't account for the complexity of emergency triage decisions. We prioritize based on medical urgency, not race. Any suggestion otherwise is irresponsible and damaging to the hardworking staff who save lives here every single day." "Keisha Williams, age 9, Gloria said, her voice cutting through Walsh's corporate deflection. "She died of diabetic ketoacidosis after waiting 3 hours. Miguel Santos, age 6, died of bacterial meningitis after waiting 4 hours. Jamal Thompson, age 7, died of a perforated appendix after waiting 2.5 hours. Say their names. Acknowledge they existed. Explain to their families how medical urgency didn't apply to their children." The silence that followed was absolute. The cameras captured Walsh's face as he struggled to respond, captured the moment a polished administrator realized he was losing control of the narrative. Behind him, Gloria saw hospital staff gathering, doctors, nurses, support workers drawn by the commotion. And she saw something in their faces: recognition, solidarity, the dawning understanding that the silence was breaking. Dr. Chen pushed through the crowd, still in his scrubs from a night shift. Behind him came Janet Wilson and 5 other nurses, all wearing their hospital badges, all standing visibly on Gloria's side of the lobby. "I'm Dr. Andrew Chen," he said directly to the cameras. "I work in this emergency room. I've witnessed the discriminatory triage practices Ms. Martinez is describing. I've compiled evidence showing a pattern of delayed care for minority patients, and I'm formally requesting a federal investigation into County General's emergency protocols." One by one, the nurses behind him spoke their names and added their testimony. Each voice was another crack in the hospital's defense, another piece of truth that couldn't be dismissed as one angry parent overreacting. Walsh tried to regain control. "These employees are violating patient privacy laws and hospital policy by speaking to media. They'll face immediate termination." "Fire us," Janet Wilson said, stepping forward. "Fire all of us, and explain to the world why you're retaliating against medical staff for exposing discrimination. Make that headline. See how that helps your reputation." The reporters were typing furiously, cameras capturing every exchange. Gloria could see Walsh calculating, his PR team whispering urgent advice, the moment of reckoning arriving faster than he'd anticipated. This was supposed to be contained, buried under settlements and non-disclosure agreements, but it had exploded into the public square, and now the whole city was watching. "County General Hospital will cooperate fully with any official investigations," Walsh finally said, his voice tight. "But we stand by our triage protocols and our staff's commitment to equal treatment of all patients." "These allegations are—" "3 children are dead," Gloria interrupted. "You can call them allegations if it helps you sleep at night. But their families call them sons and daughters. They call them empty bedrooms and birthday cakes never made, and Christmas presents never opened. So you stand there and talk about your protocols and your commitment, but I'm standing here because my daughter survived. And I'm going to make damn sure everyone knows that survival had nothing to do with your system, and everything to do with one doctor who looked at her when no one else would." The lobby erupted again, but Gloria was already walking away, Diana and Dr. Chen flanking her. Behind them, Janet and the other nurses formed a protective barrier, their solidarity visible and absolute. Above them, Gloria knew, Melissa was sleeping in the ICU, breathing steadily, alive. They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened on the ICU floor, Gloria saw families in the waiting area watching the news on the television mounted in the corner. The footage from the lobby was already playing. Gloria's face, her words, the hospital staff standing behind her. The story was spreading, multiplying, becoming impossible to contain. Diana's phone rang. She answered, listened, then smiled. That was the Department of Health. They're launching an immediate investigation. Federal oversight starts tomorrow. County General's Emergency Department is now under official review. Dr. Chen's phone buzzed with a text. His face went pale, then resolved into something like peace. I'm suspended pending investigation. They're escorting me out in an hour. They're making you the scapegoat, Janet said, her voice fierce. No, Dr. Chen replied. They're making me a martyr. And martyrs make excellent witnesses. He looked at Gloria. This isn't over. It's just beginning. But we started something today that can't be stopped. Gloria returned to Melissa's room, sank into the chair beside her daughter's bed, and finally let herself cry. Not tears of fear or grief, but of exhaustion and relief and the terrible weight of knowing that justice was possible, but would cost everything to achieve. Melissa stirred, her eyes fluttering open for the first time since the intubation. Mama? Gloria took her daughter's hand, felt the warmth of living fingers, the miracle of presence. I'm here, baby. I'm right here, and I'm never going to let anyone make you invisible again. Through the window, dawn light spread across the city. Down in the lobby, reporters were still broadcasting live. In offices across the state, lawyers and health officials were opening files and beginning investigations. In living rooms and bedrooms, the families of Keisha, Miguel, and Jamal were seeing the news, realizing they weren't alone, understanding that their silence could end. The system that had killed their children was finally being held accountable. Not because the institutions decided to change, not because the powerful chose justice, but because one mother refused to be dismissed, one doctor refused to be complicit, and a community refused to stay silent. Gloria looked at her daughter, alive, breathing, present, and knew that every battle ahead would be worth fighting, because Melissa survived. And now, Gloria would make sure that survival meant something beyond their own lives. She would make sure it meant change,